Everyone? Folks, we're all set to go. Thank you. All right, we're going to keep on time. Hi, everyone. My name is Will Sarney. I'm a managing director at Deloitte Consulting. I don't do tax or audit work. I sit in strategy and operations and run our water practice. And one of the more enjoyable things I get to do every year is be part of this event because I love food and water is a key part of that. So I will guide us through the afternoon sessions, provide the brief intros, and moderate a panel. I apologize in advance. I will undoubtedly kill names along the way this afternoon, but I'll give it my best shot. So the first, bless you, whoever sneezed. So the first session for the afternoon is Algae, the green game changer. We've got insects and we've got algae in the afternoon. So, that could be the afternoon theme. Fredrika Gullfot, founder and CEO, Simris ALG. Fredrika is the founder and CEO of Simris ALG, a pioneering agribusiness in southern Sweden. It is one of the world's largest and most modern algae farms of its kind. They produce omega-3 oils from algae as a premium and sustainable alternative to fish oil. So please join me in welcoming Fredrika.
Thank you. So, can everybody hear me? So I have the honor of the after lunch session, meaning that I have to be really, really exciting. So I hope you will find algae as exciting as I do. I always feel like, okay, algae and insects, they are mentioned as something very exotic and a little bit of a freak show in a way. What I would like you to take home from this is to realize that, come on guys, this is already here. It's not science fiction, it's not the future, it's something which we can use and are using already today to essentially displace unsustainable commodities in the supply chain of the food industry. So this picture shows a group of local fishermen in Sierra Leone at the coast of West Africa. And they are pondering over their day's catch. As you can see in the net, this is barely enough to feed them or their families. This is a situation that coastal fisheries are facing all over the planet. The fish that used to sustain those local communities is simply not enough anymore. So this is causing a lot of famine in areas like this, but it's also causing troubles in affluent countries such as Sweden. Simris, my own city where I live, is a coastal fishery city, and fish is virtually gone there. So the local fisheries cannot sustain their populations anymore. Huge, huge problem. And the reason for it is this: large-scale trawl fishing. This is very, very different from the sustainable coastal fisheries that used to sustain humanity for a very, very long time. This is very, very different. In this net that you're seeing here, what we see here is a catch of 400 metric tons of jack mackerel. 400 metric tons in one single catch. So, whoa, that's a lot of fish. And you can sort of imagine by yourself, so what happens if we go out and basically scoop the oceans for these amounts? That's going to be quite tough for those local little fisheries to compete with these practices. So trawl fishing, if you look at these nets, they're basically huge. They can cover entire square kilometers. And I have read about something called super trawlers, where allegedly those nets could fit up to 13 jumbo jets in one single net. 13 jumbo jets in one single net. That's absolutely insane. So how about jack mackerel then? Well, jack mackerel, its population has decreased from 300 million metric tons just 20 years ago to less than 3 million due to these overfishing practices. And this is something which is a huge, huge issue. We talk a lot about climate change and the effect the climate has. And the thing is that we often forget about what is going on in the oceans, not just due to climate change, but also due to our own practices in terms of overfishing. So this is really, really serious. And we know that oceans are on the verge of ecological collapse. So 80% of all fish stocks in the world, they are already fully exploited or overexploited. The Living Blue Planet report by the World Wildlife Organization, World Wildlife Foundation, states that over 50% of all life in the ocean has just, it's gone. It's gone in just about 30 years. So it's absolutely insane. We have to do something about it. And the irony of it all, so this fish is not used for food, so you can go ahead and enjoy your MSC certified fish and all those nice restaurants that we have represented here. That is not the problem, because the problem is that this fish is not used for food, it is used to make this fish meal for feed, to feed other fish or other animals that we in turn eat. This is just complete insanity. And it takes actually 5 pounds of jack mackerel in order to grow a little bit less than 1 pound of salmon, farmed salmon. So this is also insane that we have to scoop up so much fish from the oceans in order to sustain our fish farms. Everybody should understand that this is definitely not sustainable. Fish meal. When we talk about these large-scale trawl fishing, reduction fisheries, as it's called, when you do not use the fish for food, but rather use it to produce fish meal and fish oil, the interesting thing here that there are some interesting economical mechanisms at place. So 80% of that fish is turned into fish meal for feed, but 20% of it is turned into fish oil, where parts of it is also used for feed, but parts of it is used to make omega-3s, omega-3 dietary supplement. And this is a fraction of the reduction fishery produce that is very, very valuable. And this is essentially what makes this so profitable. So it's not just the fish meal, which really, really sells at low prices. It's always, the highest value ingredients that actually makes that there are economic incitaments in order to continue doing this. So when you look at fish oil, there is this investigate journalism show in Sweden called Uppdrag Granskning. They actually showed that to produce 1 bottle of omega-3 dietary supplements, it takes 600 sardines to provide the oil for those capsules. That is absolutely insane. And each and every one of those sardines is supposed to be enough to supply 1 child's need for protein, daily need for protein. So this is just insane. And the second irony here, not just that we're using all this fish in order to make fish meal for feed, in order to feed other animals and then eat them. The second irony is that if we look at omega-3s, the thing is, they don't even come from fish. They come from completely different organisms that the fish get in their diet. And I'm talking about algae, finally, microalgae. So we already heard today that the oceans provide over half of the oxygen that we breathe in the air. And in fact, it is algae, or rather microalgae, that produce the most of this oxygen. So what are microalgae? Well, microalgae, you can say, are the mother of all plants. Microalgae are small, tiny, unicellular plants that live in all aquatic environments on the Earth, in particular in the oceans. It was actually these microalgae that once upon a time turned our very hostile carbon dioxide-rich atmosphere into the oxygen-rich air that we breathe today, and that made all life on Earth possible. So we have a lot to thank these microalgae for. What is interesting with them is, since they are so, such ancient organisms, they form the basis of what we call the marine food chain, meaning that they also produce many of of nutrients that are absolutely essential to health of animals and humans. And one of those nutrients is actually omega-3s. So omega-3s are a group of fatty acids which are very important for our cardiovascular health, for our brain function, for eyesight, for the normal development of fetuses and breastfed infants and so on. So these are fats that we need to get from our diets. And usually, I would say the conventional way to get those is by eating enough fatty fish. Now, it's a problem anymore because people don't eat enough fish, or people might eat farmed fish, which doesn't contain as much omega-3s as fish used to, or people eat fatty fish from places such as the Baltic Sea, which is heavily contaminated, and then the fish in turn contains environmental toxins such as heavy metals, PCBs, and dioxins, and so on that accumulate in the food chain. So a lot of people turn into supplements and turn into fish oil supplements. It's a huge industry. It's a global multi-billion-dollar industry. It grows at a whopping 12% annually, and the fish is simply not enough. The fish oil is simply not enough to supply that increasing demand for omega-3 fish oils. Now, fortunately enough, when it comes to algae that produce these omega-3s in the first place, today we can farm these algae industrially, and it looks like this. So this is a picture of my own algae farm outside Simris in Sweden, in southern Sweden. So we have taken over an old, very iconic plant breeding facility that used to belong to Weibull's, for those of you who know, so Ham and Högfrö. And we have refurbished it into a very, very big algae farm. And what you can see here are in those glass tubes, we actually pump the water where the algae grow round and round and round. So these are all in all 60 kilometers of glass tubes, or a little bit less than 40 miles of glass tubes, where we pump the water and the algae are exposed to light, and by photosynthesis they will convert the carbon dioxide that we supply into the algae water into their fatty acids, their omega-3, and releasing oxygen in the plate. So we already talked about what is the most destructive technology in the world, and that was animal farming. And I would say that photosynthesis is by far the most constructive technology in the world. And I also believe that the future is plant-based and that algae will play a big role in it. So this is what it looks, one of these factories of the future. It's already here. I really, really want to stress that we are not about research or development. This is an industrial facility. We are in market phase. We are selling our products to end consumers. So this is not science fiction. This is done already today. I am not only here to plug our omega-3s from algae. I want to speak more about algae and how algae can be used to replace unsustainable commodities in the supply chain of the food industry. So fish oil is actually just one example. I think it's a very good example, but another excellent example is, sorry, that's just a picture of what you get here, the nice, sustainable and premium omega-3 from the algae. What I wanted to show is this. Orangutans, you know that they are an endangered species due to their habitats declining, and that is because of deforestation due to our hunt for palm oil. So palm oil is used extensively in the food industry. Do we still have Unilever in the room? Because Unilever has actually a very interesting project ongoing where they are about to replace the palm oil, not in food, but in the very iconic Lux soaps with oil from algae, actually. So this is still done on a very small scale, but I would say that palm oil is definitely one of those unsustainable commodities that can and will be replaced by algal oil in the future. We're still at the problem is still here that producing algal oil is quite expensive still if you compare to how cheap commodities such as palm oil still are. Now that of course is an issue, that palm oil produced unsustainably, it's very cheap to produce it, but the reason for this is that the external costs are actually not being paid. So if palm oil producer would have to pay for the havoc that they create on the environment, they would definitely not be doing this at competitive prices prices anymore. And of course, as the algae industry develops, we will be able to work at larger scales, and we will be able to produce these oils on a cheaper scale. So let's say that fish oils for omega-3s and other very high-value compounds, that is the first step. The next step, if we look like 5-10 years ahead, will be more bulk oils, such as palm oil, for example. And finally, so if you think about it, these algae, of course, they do not only produce oils. In fact, they're very rich in protein. There are algae that produce over 50% of protein, and actually you will get some of those in your goodie bag when you get home from here. But the interesting thing is when we grow our algae and we extract the oils to make omega-3s, or we extract the oils to make palm oil, we will get a fraction which is very, very rich in protein. And as we know that the sustainable production, sustainable access to protein is also one of these big, big issues that the food industry has to tackle in the future. And here I believe that, again, we will be able to see a lot of protein coming from algae, in particular that we can use the whole algae, so to speak, and we can extract oil for it for certain purposes. We can use the proteins for other, and there are also very interesting functional carbohydrates that can be used for other things. So there's a lot to be found in here, and while this is far away from, you know, the nice seaweed salad, you might eat it for the graphics or something like that, I think that algae is one of these really, really interesting crops for the future and commodities that can be used basically to replace so much of the unsustainable commodities that we see in the food industries today. And that is why I believe that algae are a true game changer. Thank you. Bring it on.
I'm stepping out of my role for a minute. So thinking 5-10 years out, what other applications do you envision? I love the palm oil replacement.
Yes.
Anything else you're seeing in terms of companies looking at this as, you know, game changer, innovative technology?
Within the food industry?
Yes.
I would say the functional carbohydrates are really, really interesting. There is also a lot of ongoing in uncovering all those bioactive molecules within the algae. We can have anything in terms of, for example, alternatives to antibiotics. Then we're a bit, you know, a step ahead from food, but there are also other interesting properties in terms of anything from I would say, yeah, functional carbohydrates that can have immunomodulating functions or other beneficial functions for the digestive tracts and things so on. So there's just a lot. And just as we heard before, who was talking about that there are 100,000s of different algae. The variety in terms of algae is as large as land-based plants, and we still know so little about them. So we need more research. But we also need more industrial algae farming so that we can really get this growing. Because the problem at the moment is that algae businesses out there are really, really small. Even if I say that, okay, we're at industrial scale, we couldn't, for example, supply enough algae for Unilever, so to speak, because we're simply too small. So we need to grow. Everybody in the algae industry needs to grow in order so that we can truly make the change that we want to see here.
Thank you.
Up there. Yes. I actually don't know the prices of palm oil. I would say huge. But when it comes in terms of fish oil, so if you look at it at ingredient level, the market prices for algal oil today are roughly 5 times higher than fish oil. If you look at our oil, it's even more expensive because we grow them phototrophically, as it is called, in greenhouses. So we cannot really compete with price. It's also one of the reasons why we, as a company, have chosen a business model where we make end consumer products, because we realize that we would not be able to compete out there on an ingredient market. But this is something where this is going to change in the future. Just as Impossible Foods showed us this very nice picture about, you know, the development steps here, you know, 5 years, 10 years, and so on. So there's still a lot of things that are going to happen here that will make large-scale operations more, how I say, it's going to be less expensive. But on that said, I would say I do think that also the food industry has to rethink all these price points. We have to rethink whether we actually can continue in basically causing this debt to the planet by producing stuff at prices which it simply doesn't cover the costs. So we need to take those externalities in account as well, because otherwise it's not going to work.
Thank you.
Thank you. Tack så mycket.